going on, guys? Ahmed back with another video here today to talk to you and give my thoughts and review of this new Rowdy Rebel album, Rowdy versus Rebel. So just to give you all a little bit of context, as I always do, I am definitely a big fan of Rowdy and his movement, especially since he has come out of jail. The features that he's been, dropping, the songs that I've heard from him have been really, really strong. I think where Rowdy Rebel strives is the delivery and the cadence, along with just standard drill lyrics about his personal experience. And I think being a little bit older, obviously he was locked up with Bobby Shmurda, he gives a bit of a different perspective, but he still got that modern hunger because he never really got to prove himself before he went to jail. And so this is really, really cool. I was really enjoying all of the leading singles for the record, and I was very excited. And Rowdy Rebel hit us with a double album, two-sided, Rowdy on one side, Rebel on the other side. I gotta be honest, it was pretty good. And with these videos, I think I'm just gonna go down the list of the different criteria that I have and talk about what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy about each criteria. So the first criteria that we're going to talk about is the writing, which I have as a good, very, very close to a great. I almost gave it a great, but there's a couple of things that hold it back. But for a double album, 17 songs, the writing was consistently strong. The bars and the wittiness and the joy and the humor never was lost, and he was even able to get more deep and honest about some of his struggles on the second half or the second disc of the record, which was very enjoyable and nice to hear from him, because for a long time I've never listened to a Rowdy Rebel album until now. So until now I hadn't really heard that from him. So this was really interesting time I got to hear about from Rowdy. So that was definitely the strong point of the record. However, the reason why it kind of loses me is because it's a double album. And the thing with a double album is that you need to justify a double album, right? You need to be able to justify a double album. And which means you need to have enough to say for all of that time. And I felt like, to a certain extent, really on both sides, I felt like it got to a point where he didn't really have enough to say, really. And he was kind of just repeating messages over and over again. And it wasn't like he wasn't repeating lyrics or anything, but there was definitely like songs or two where I'm like, these are just the same thing. And so there was repetition, which, to be clear, repetition in an album is not inherently bad. The only reason I will personally mark you down for it is if it gets like super bad, right? Like if it gets to the point where, like I said, you're literally carbon copying the exact same message, right? You know what I'm saying? If you maybe talk about one part of a relationship at a different part of a relationship, and then the breakup, okay, that's fine. But when you know what I'm saying, when you have the same thing, you know what I'm saying, that's when it kind of gets an issue for me. And the first half, also there was a lot of lyrically, there was a lot of repetition when it comes to the messaging. It was, and of course the first half wasn't like a lyrical escapade on, the greatness of Rowdy Rebel. It was just fun drill tracks. But I think where the first half suffered was it kind of felt like a cash grab. And I don't mean that to like insult Rowdy or any of his fans or the album, because it was still a good half, but it felt a bit like a cash grab. The reason I say that, I've heard this excuse a lot, where it's like, oh, they're doing the smart thing. Drake, when he drops this album, he's giving people something different. He's giving us the smart thing, right? But if you're gonna do that, you got to give us something completely different, and you got to execute it well. And the thing with this is that it felt like, after a while, it felt like copy paste the same messaging, same ideas on a Michigan beat, a Chicago beat, a New York beat. It just felt, and maybe, and this is just, I'm not even 100%, but maybe if he had given us like a pure flexing song, and then he had given us like Pop Smoke, for example, like Dior was a pure flexing song, and then Welcome to the Party was a pure song about the community. Um, and then you had like Feeling, which was like purely about drilling, right? If he had separated those themes, then maybe it would have been a great for me. But I think with everything kind of bleeding together, a lot of there was definitely, I want to say it was definitely like 2 or 3 songs from each half that I could have done without. But like I said, overall the writing was still very focused, very strong, and very enjoyable throughout. Like, if you go song by song, none of the songs had bad writing. The other problem I had with the record was that, and this is the reason why it has taken me so long to come to you all to review it, was that I loved the song Rowdy versus Rebel when it came out, right? Because it was this fire like thing where he was talking about his alter ego, and he was going back and forth with himself, and it was very enjoyable. But I feel, from a narrative perspective, and this is right, when you do a double album, there's more, you got to think more conceptual about it, right? You can't just be primitive, I enjoy music. Um, the problem with that song is, in the context of the album, it doesn't make much sense, because um Roddy Scene Green Rebel. Rebel was the first half, and of course that's the bong 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 bong. That's the shooting. Like, he's prideful about, the gang and the community he's a part of. He is sort of fully embellishing in the sort of gang life, and he is clearly trapped in the trauma and is not far removed. He has not removed himself from it yet. And that part is fine. And that we understand through the song Rowdy vs. Rebel. The hard part is that the second half isn't really, when we hear in the song, how Rowdy is described, he's described as someone who would prefer not to be violent, who would prefer to just chill and make music and do all that stuff. But from what I got, the second half seems more like Rowdy is someone more aware of the trauma that he's been through and more honest about why he's here, right? And that's very different than somebody who doesn't want to be here. I feel like it, and it almost breaks that narrative of an ultra ego, because to me, Rowdy and Rebel is less about an alter ego and more about him moving through life, more about him being, I used to be here, where I was enveloped by the poor traditions and trauma of my neighborhood, and I was doing whatever, engaging in whatever, to feel like I was a part of something, and because I didn't like the people on the other side. And the second half is you've now matured from that point. That's not an alter ego, that's just you maturing as an individual. And that doesn't really line up. Let me know, I leave my Instagram, make sure to subscribe so we can get the comments turned on. But that is one of the things for me, is like, and let me know what y'all think when I drop this, and definitely DM me. But for me, it's like, I don't like that. I don't, that's an issue for me, right? Um, uh, and maybe it's because I held a lot of sentimental value to the song Rowdy vs. Rebel, and to then see it kind of get in the way of like my review process was like, damn. But I think that was a genuine like weaker point of the record. And yeah, that was the writing. Uh, the next thing was the flows. Flows was I put great. The flows were great. Um, Rowdy's cadence and delivery is so enjoyable. Um, and he really marks his own style. He's got his own flair to him. He's got his own ad libs, all of that, and I love when people have their own ad libs. Whether it's the go go from Ferg or the hand from French Montana, I love when people have their own ad libs. And Rowdy's got his own ad libs, he's got his own delivery, and it's pronounced and unique. And that was very fun. The flows are very strong. He definitely experimented with like 3 or 4 flows throughout the album. That was like really enjoyable. And it was overall great. You can definitely, in terms of why it doesn't get the amazing rating, you can definitely, for me at least, see the difference between somebody like a Rowdy and then Fabio, especially on a song like Paid Off, which is probably my favorite song off the album. I don't think it's the best song off the album, but I think it's my personal favorite. Where Fabio, like, I listen to that song and it's like he really has like 3 or 4 flows in like one song, and he gives each flow enough time for you to appreciate that pocket, and then he'll do something else. Whereas Rowdy kind of has his signature, couple flows that he uses, which is fine, but that's just simply why I'm not giving it the amazing rating. But still, great flows, consistent throughout, no rapping off beat, no boring flows. Yeah. Production and creativity, I also gave a great. So the thing with this was, as I alluded to kind of earlier, to a certain extent, it kind of felt like a cash grab, but in production, that actually works to his advantage because it means that there's a lot of different styles of production on here. Um, there's a lot of different kinds of beats with different influences from Michigan to Chicago to New York, uh, to even some Georgia trap beats on here, where I felt like he was really coming into his own instrumentally, not coming into his own, but learning how to ride on different beats and not boxing himself in, right? And it was very interesting to see him like experiment with different styles of production all throughout. I think the second half was definitely weaker production wise, just because as I move through, I mean, every rap era is going to have its tropes, but as I kind of move through this current era of rap, I'm really just getting sick of like people. The only like way that we can do conscious rap is on these like very boring pianos, and that's not just Polo G. That's also Little Dirk. It's a lot of people, and it's just like, why are we still in that box? Why are we still? I like what Chef G does with or not well Chef G, but I like what Sleepy Hollow does when he's got to get introspective. He really gets into his bag. But even Benny the Butcher, sometimes whenever he's got to get into his conscious bag, he kind of again just relies on pianos. And I just wish that we would rely on a different instrument, like just as a generation, or at least do what Kendrick does and switch up the tempo of the pianos to make it more exciting. But right now, I just be feeling like it's just like piano beats out of a pack, like, it was definitely like, but the writing made up for it, so it was fine. I think the only thing that sort of stops it from being, and of course, he's incredibly creative, his own style of lyrics, his own style of delivery, all of that, incredibly creative, very enjoyable. I think the only thing stopping this from being amazing was while the production was great or good, there was no beat that I was really wowed by in like I've never heard that before. Songs like Paid Off, I enjoyed the beats, but it was because that moaning sound in a drill beat is just something I personally enjoy, but it's not because I've never heard it before. Versus like, I'll compare it to somebody different. Versus you take like a Conway the Machine, for example, and you got all these sounds and these combinations that I've never heard before. You got these orchestras playing in the back. You got these blips and these bloops, and there's so much going on. There's dynamic. It doesn't feel like a loop. There's like dynamics and like a buildup. So it was more. It was a bit less dynamic than I would have liked from a production standpoint. And that's like, at the end of the day, Rowdy, he makes music for the streets, right? And at the end of the day, there's always going to be a bit of a disconnect with music reviewers and people who make music for the streets, because they're they're not going to care as much about like the beats gotta be in some specific da 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 da, because they want to give it out for, you know what I'm saying, that they want to be the voice of the streets. And so I'm not mad at it per se, but that's just my personal opinion. So now let's get on to the features. Honestly, I'm debating. I put it down as great, but I think I might give it an amazing. However, I am gonna make the asterisk that I don't think that it matters as much because there's not that many features on here. But when I think about it, the only dud feature was the Jadakiss feature, and it was because his voice was so gravelly. Like I didn't know, like and it's like I've heard Jadakiss features. Jadakiss has been on kind of a feature on actually recently. And I've heard Jadakiss features before, and they've not sounded this gravelly, but like, there was something like he had just got done smoking a cig or something. I don't know. It just sounded really, really like rough to me, and not in a raspy. That's the word. It sounded way too raspy, almost like a Jeezy. And it was like, it was unfortunate, but even then, that verse is kind of growing on me as the rasp kind of, the more I listen to that song, the rasp kind of fades out, and the lyricism, which Jada always brings, is really beginning to shine through. So even that verse is kind of coming on, and I'm beginning to enjoy it more. But other than the Jadakiss feature, it was an overall very enjoyable experience. I think everyone did a really, really good job. Dreezy killed it. The guy at the very end, I think his name is Danny. He did a great. Oh wait, hold on. Who is this? Oh, I don't know who it was. That was another thing. Now I remember. That's why I have it as great. Never mind. One of the people on the last song was not it for me. Also, I think it was the dude who was on the chorus or doing the vocals for the chorus. I don't know. That heavy auto tune sound was just not. It was not landing with me at all. So I think I might keep it as great. But other than those two, everybody did their thing. Dreezy absolutely killed it. A Boogie, man, it's okay. The crazy thing about that Boogie feature was literally, I kid you not, I was chilling with a friend of mine, and I said, I didn't even know the Rowdy Rebel album was out. I said, man, I feel like if A Boogie really figured it out, I feel like he could make some amazing choruses for these drill rappers. And not that drill rappers don't do a great job, because there's plenty that do, but I was like, man, he could really like do a really good job with that. And we literally said, oh, what's Rowdy doing? We checked, and A Boogie's on the chorus. I literally, I kid you not, that is what happened. And he absolutely killed it. And his rapping verse was almost like, it sounded like it could be taken off of his first album. I think it was like TBD or something like that. I can't remember. But which I'm not mad at. I'm here for that. And I think the Fabio verse, this might be the best Fabio feature verse like ever. Like, yeah, this might be the best Fabio feature verse like ever. Like, obviously, Off the Grid is the more critically acclaimed, more well known, all that. But I'm talking about like from what Fabio is known for, and like what we know Fabio Foreign for, and how we appreciate him as a drill artist. this was him at his finest, because it was, of course, the drill, but it was these creative, witty punchlines that we've never heard before. Coming to join with three ladders. I was like it was, and the rhymes and the way that he rhymes, he's just so creative with it that he really, this was literally, I'm telling you, this was one of the best Fabio features. Like, I think this is literally the best Fabio feature I've ever heard, ever. Like I said, uh, Off the Grid comes close, but it felt like more of a religious verse that was for Kanye. And that's more of a, we respect him for being able to fit in that lane. But this was like pure drill, bars for days, creativity for days. And the way he went back and forth with Rowdy was just mind blowing. And so, yeah, that was fire. I like the French Montana verse. It was a couple weird bars here and there, but overall the French Montana verse was solid enough, and nothing less than I would expect from a French Montana verse. And that was, yeah, that was great. And let's see. Also, but keep in mind with the features, I don't think I'm going to keep them at great, but keep in mind the features don't really matter as much on this one because there's really not that many features. Um, so yeah, but anyway, right. And the final score of musical execution. So this is interesting. From a musical execution standpoint, I give this an amazing rating because every single song was strong. Every single song was enjoyable. Every single song had its own flair to it. Stylistically, again, not lyrically, but we're not talking about lyrically, we're just talking about music. Um, every single song had its own flair to it, and it felt like he really made sure to like have all of the drill songs be possible hits, and then all of the, slower songs still definitely be enjoyable. I think that the amazing rating is like very fleeting, like it's just barely amazing. Um, Maybe if I were to like rate it, be like an amazing slash great, because I definitely feel like the second half of the record doesn't land as hard for me, but there are still some great cuts on there, like Married to and New York and Gangster's Testimony. So it was still a pretty strong side musically, just not as good as the first half. And again, with the piano beats, it just kind of like derivative towards the end. And then, of course, you got Rowdy versus Rebel, which I think is literally one of the best drill songs ever, especially like of this year. It is a top 3 or 4 drill song of this year, along with City of Gods and Changed on Me and Tell 'em by Ross Swish and Aha by Lil Durk. There we go. But yeah, that song was fire. And musically, I just found myself bopping my head for the majority of the time, right? So that was definitely an amazing slash great rating. I definitely really, it's definitely strong. Overall closing thoughts and favorite songs. I am really proud of Rowdy Rebel. Very proud of Rowdy Rebel. And he has really made it his, he has really made a strong argument for himself in this top 10 discussion. I can't, I'm saying, I can't tell y'all where everybody's gonna place and who's all gonna be on it, but I can tell you Rowdy Rebel for this double album, the leading singles for it, and everything like that, he will be on this album. Sorry, he will be on this project, or he will be on, what the heck? All I can tell you is that he will definitely be making the top 15 best New York artists right now, because he dropped so much material and all of it was very, very strong. I'm just very happy to see him come out of prison and really make the most of this opportunity and go all out with it. But it was just so enjoyable. And man, I'm telling you, some of these songs, I would have to say my personal favorite, I've alluded to it a couple times, But my favorite songs are definitely Paid Off, New York, and Understand Me. Understand Me. Oh my goodness. The piano, like the build up in the piano. This and that's like those are the kind of instrumentals I wish Rowdy would get on. Where that do 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 do, where it's like building up into something intense and big. Those is like, oh, that's what I need. And that's what I really, really enjoy. And it was such a strong song. Definitely gonna be in my rotation. But overall, like I said, really strong record. I would give it a great rating. And you'll see my year-end albums tier list, but it's definitely going to be in there. It's definitely a really strong project. And definitely, I think when when we talk about the resurgence of New York hip hop that is going on right now, Roddy Rebel is definitely somebody who we can point to as representing the resurgence of New York hip hop. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts on the record. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, please. And yeah, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.